and welcome to another writing vlog. Today I am writing for the first time in a very long time, and honestly I haven't written very much at all in the past 30 days. I'm going to talk about my break and whether or not I think it was a good thing, and then today I'm going to continue writing. I recently am up to a little over 11,000 words. I did write last night a little bit. So last night I wrote about 500 words. I revised the first chapter, included the writing of the emotional aspect of the scene. So now actually with the 500 words I wrote last night, it's close to 12,000. But that was the first time I had written, hold on, I need my word counts. Okay, so I wrote yesterday, but before that, the last time I wrote was December 15th, and that's almost 20 days of no writing. And December 15th, I wrote about 1,000 words, and before that, the last time I wrote was December 2nd. So another 2 weeks of no writing on top of that. So pretty much the month of December, I barely wrote. A lot of that was planned. I did take time to work on my outline instead of write, and I decided not to write while I was working on the outline. I could have probably written about one more chapter before I really got stuck, but I decided to wait. And looking back on it, I'm already kind of regretting that decision. Especially last night, I was trying to get myself in the zone of writing. And a lot of times when I do that, I try to think about the last things that I wrote and where the scene or the chapter needs to go next. And I found that I could not remember what I wrote. So I know the scene that I last wrote and kind of where the story ends, but I have no clue what the characters were saying to each other. I have no clue what the characters were doing, where were their physical locations in the scene, what were other people in the scene doing. I do not remember what I wrote. And that made it really hard for me to plan because I had no clue what came next. So what I'm going to have to do now when I start writing today is sit down and reread the last few pages that I wrote. I need to know what to write next. Like, I don't even know if I fully finished the scene or not. I really don't know. And so I need to figure out what I'm doing next. Like, I can't tell you about it because I don't know. In retrospect, I really wish I had written at least 10 or 15 minutes a day. Maybe not every day, but some days. So like maybe 3 or 4 days a week. Just because if I had done that, I would have been more aware of what was going on in my story from a day-to-day basis. And I wouldn't have to refer back to what I wrote and kind of make a plan and think about it. Like, I would have just kind of kept crawling along. And I think now that I'm at this point where I have to start writing and I don't remember what's going on, it would have been a lot more helpful to have been in that state of mind almost every day about how my story is progressing. Today is an entire writing day. I have dedicated this afternoon and this evening to writing. I am going to take breaks. I'm not going to sit down and write for like 6 hours. That's way too much. But I've decided that I will write for 30 minutes to a half hour and then take a break and then go back and write for another 30 minutes to a half hour. I'm going to plan my writing sessions around scenes and chapters. So I'm going to write until I end a scene or get to the end of a chapter where it's a good stopping point, and then I'll take a break. And my breaks will probably be extended. Like, maybe I will clean my bathroom. I will have to make dinner tonight, so I'll take a break to make dinner. Things like that. I'm also reading Fourth Wing and Iron Flame right now in preparation for the upcoming release of Onyx Storm, so I have to do that as well. I worked it out so I read 50 pages a day and I'll be done by the time the book comes out. So by setting it up this way where I do some writing and then do something else and then do some writing and do something else. In the past it hasn't worked, but today it's very chill today. So I don't think I'm gonna get distracted by anything or feel like I have to do anything. I'm just gonna kind of take it as it goes. All right, now it's time to do a little bit of reading of my last chapter so I can figure out what to write next. right, end of day 1, and you probably saw my word count, but I'm going to say it again just to be sure you saw it. So in this entire day, I wrote 1,039 words. That's terrible, but I want to explain to you why it is that low. Typically when I have this much time, I write around 3,000 words. And if I had to guess, I probably did at some point today write 3,000 words. But what I ended up doing was writing a scene or writing a part of a scene and then saying to myself, I don't really like it, or it doesn't make sense, and I would delete it and rewrite it and delete it and rewrite it. And I did this quite a few times. And honestly, I got to the point where I was like, you know what? This just is going to be what it is, and I'm going to move on. And once I did that, I had about an hour to write left in the night. And I wrote about another 500 words in that hour. I was struggling a little bit with the last scene I was writing just because I had never really planned out that scene in my head. So I was just kind of winging it. So yes, 1,000 words in a day. And I probably spent between 3 and 4 hours total writing. I did take one plotting break. I had this idea pop in my head and I wanted to kind of run through it on paper to see if it would work out. And then I just did a lot of this rewriting. I'm surprised how much rewriting I did, but I really just wanted, it was kind of like plot holy, and I just wanted to see if I could fix it. And I didn't. So I said, I'm just going to go back to that when I have a better idea, or draft number 2. Maybe I'll come up with a way to fix it later on. I definitely spent too much time dwelling on it tonight, but I just kind of got lost in my thoughts and I wasn't realizing how much time I was spending on it. So what I did tonight was I finished the last scene that I wrote like 2 weeks ago. It turns out I did not finish the scene. I kind of wrote up to like a certain event happening and pretty much stopped. And I didn't really explain what happened after the event, which is important. So I wrote that out, finished up that scene. And that's actually the one I was like going back and forth about trying to rewrite. And so that's unfortunately took quite a bit of time. And one thing I discovered while writing the scene, which had nothing to do with the rewriting part, was I had this entire scene and I felt like at the end I maybe needed to change how it occurred. And by this I mean the scene started in a public setting. And then as I finished writing the scene, I just kind of thought to myself, I feel like it makes more sense if it's in a private setting. It has nothing to do with the dialogue of the characters. It has nothing to do with the events that are happening in the scene. I'm happy with all those and they need to happen for the story. It was interesting that all of a sudden tonight, I kind of felt like the background, my Christmas trees flashing. It's just interesting to me that the background has never been an issue for me. And then all of a sudden today, it just became this big issue and I was getting hung up on, well, should this happen in a public setting or a private setting? I don't know. And then I was debating in my head, I don't know which one makes the most sense. It was interesting. There's no right or wrong answer for this because truly what's going on in the background in the scene is not critical to the story, but I like my story to make sense and to be believable. So we'll see how I work that out in draft 2. So I finished out that scene and then I wrote the next chapter. The next chapter, this was chapter 8 so far. I'm going to try and label, what in the world? I went into chapter 8. It was very short, too short probably for a chapter. I'm trying to describe less and jump ahead in time because I have a tendency to want to describe every single thing that happens and every single thing the character's thinking and every single event that takes place. And I'm trying to make a better practice in my writing of summarizing. So instead of going through every conversation that a character has with somebody else, kind of summarize and say, later that night we talked about XYZ, right? And came to the conclusion of this. One sentence to talk about a conversation that probably lasted an hour. So I took the first half of that chapter and tried to do a summary chapter of this is everything that happened in the span of, we'll say 5 hours. I had a few paragraphs and then I wrote, it's kind of like a 2-part chapter. When I was writing the second part, it was more of a real-time situation, but it was kind of short. So I'm going to have to either lengthen that or combine it with a new chapter. or do something. It is an important chapter, so I can't really scrap it. I don't know, we'll see. So I'm at 12,764 words. So that means I am over a tenth of the way done with this novel, which seems like a lot already. And I feel like I have barely gotten started with telling my story, even though I'm pretty far into it. I'm gonna pick this back up tomorrow and see if I can make a lot more progress on my word count. Now that I have got this scene out of the way, I know where I need to go since I have my outline. And I'm hoping I can just crank out a few thousand words tomorrow. But it was an interesting night nonetheless. I learned more about, things that happen while I write and how to approach things. And any experience like that is a good learning experience for me. Good morning. It is day 2 of trying to write after a long break. And I wasn't going to record a little spiel before I got into writing my book. I was just going to show you me writing my book. But some things have been happening and I just wanted to share with you because it's part of this process. I want to be open and transparent about what this journey is like and how things are going for me as I go through this process. And I am just still really struggling with burnout. It has not gotten better since I made my burnout video. Probably gotten worse. Today is just one of those days. I woke up this morning and I have just not been in the mood to write at all. I'm going to try it again today, but it was just been extremely hard for me. Usually I am constantly thinking, not just about my book, but about like things I have to do, planning my day in my head or planning my week in my head. And today my mind has just felt completely blank. I feel like my mind has mentally had it with everything that's going on. It just makes it really hard and really motivated to write. I've pretty much sat on this couch for an hour telling myself I need to start writing and just not having the energy or motivation to get off the couch and pick up my computer and start. It really stinks. I finally got the energy to sit in front of the camera and talk to you about it. I am going to write today and I'm hopeful that I can write another 1,000 words. I wrote 1,000 words yesterday. My goal is to write another 1,000 today. I think I can do it. I just hope that I don't get frustrated by the end. I want to push through because normally when I feel like this, I choose not to write. I don't want a negative attitude to filter into my work, and I want to always come into my work with the best mindset possible so I can produce a really high quality writing. I'm gonna switch it up a little bit today and try and push myself to write even though I don't feel like it. There's a few different reasons why. The first being that I sort of felt like this yesterday. It was not to this extent. And I did sit down and write, and after like 10 or 15 minutes, I was really in the zone. I was putting out really high quality writing. I know yesterday I said like I kept writing things and erasing things, and yes, that was true, but I was consistently writing. Like I didn't stop. I wasn't stuck anywhere. I had a very clear idea of what I was writing, and if I didn't like it, I erased it and wrote something else. So I was writing consistently for a few hours yesterday. My hope is that I can kind of do the same thing again, where I start writing, I start to get into it, and then I have no problem writing. The second reason being that I unfortunately believe I will exist in this state of burnout for probably about the next month, just based on what's going on in my life. I know I can't take like another month off writing. I pretty much took all of December off and I already regret it. And I do not want to take all of January off as well. So my plan going forward is to try and write a little bit each day. And I probably won't even get to every day, but at least try for like 4 to 5 times a week. It's just so I can be consistent in the practice and get a little bit of my book done each day. I just want to set myself up with the familiarity of having these feelings or not feeling like writing, but forcing myself to do it anyway. And then kind of just establish that pattern so that over the next month, it doesn't seem like such a chore. Like today, it has seemed like such a chore, and I never want my writing to feel like that. I'm gonna try and write for about an hour or until I find a good stopping place or I get 1,000 words, somewhere in there. Then I'll probably stop for the day. I am giving myself the night off, even though I've kind of like taken the morning off. So I'm gonna see what I can accomplish this afternoon, and I'll catch back up with you after that. That was quite a success, honestly. I did not anticipate that going so well. I did what I thought I was going to do, and within 5 or 10 minutes of jumping straight in, I was totally in the zone. I wrote a lot more than I thought I would. I wrote for about 2 hours. And let's see how much I wrote. I wrote 1,423 words. And so I ended at 14,187. So close to 1,500 words in 2 hours, which is really great. I wrote an entire chapter. I finished up the end of one chapter and wrote an entire chapter. I know I keep saying this, but I still can't believe how productive I was. Considering the mood I was in before, I feel like writing kind of gave me like that second, I don't know, like a second wind. And as I was writing, I felt like I had more energy and my mind was starting to come up with things. I thought of something that I needed to write a few chapters before because I'd forgot to mention it. And I put some stuff on my list for stuff to do when I go on the second draft. So I felt like it was just a super productive session. And I'm really glad I could end today on such a high in terms of my book because I was feeling pretty down this morning. So this is really nice. I'm still a little concerned. I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, but I'm still a little concerned about the length of my novel. Typically a novel, this is going to be an adult novel. So typically that's around 100,000 words. And right now I'm at 14,000 whatever, and that's not that bad. But when I look at my outline, I am still in the first act. Okay, I just checked my stack of cards, like look how thick this is. It's my outline. So I just finished, this chapter ended the first act. We'll just round up to 15,000 words. I think it makes it a little bit easier. And I have 9 acts in my story. So I have 3 main acts and I broke each act up into 3 additional acts. So I have 9. And I wrote 15,000 for the first act. Where's my phone? Why do I keep needing stuff over here? So if I do the math, 15,000 times 9 is 135,000 words, which is way too long. So I'm a little bit concerned about the length of my novel at this point. And I've been kind of watching this for a while as I've been going through and writing my 500 to 1,000 words here and there, noticing that I am progressing through the story and I'm hitting all the points I want to hit. I know that the length of this novel is going to be an issue already. And I'm a little bit concerned about that. I'm not going to do anything about it because it's far too early. I think in the first act, I could axe a chapter completely and that would cut down on my word count. But considering how much I've written already and it's the first act and I still have like 8 more to go, I'm really concerned about how much I write and what that will do to my book. But the only way to see what happens is to keep writing. So that's something I'm going to watch and not do anything about right now, and I'll probably revisit this topic in the future. But other than that, the writing went well today, and I'm really happy with the progress I made today and yesterday. So overall, I wrote this weekend almost 2,500 words, which is great. I'm really happy with that, especially because I have a job and I have all this other stuff I gotta do. I feel like even 100 words a day is great progress. I'm really excited to continue my story. It's starting to get into the good part. You know, I've kind of passed through the first act, which is where all the inciting incident happens and characters are being introduced and stuff like that. And the second act is where things start to happen and the characters are starting to be a little more autonomous and you kind of know who the characters are when you're reading. So this will be really interesting to write, and I'll be writing that in the next vlog.